Hey guys, and welcome to another preview for Crusader Kings 2, The Reaper's Due, the upcoming expansion that'll be out just in a few days by the time you watch this. I wanted to show off probably, maybe not the coolest, but one of the coolest new features for this, which is the game rules screen. This happens anytime you start a new game and you hit play. You'll get this pop-up called Game Rules, and I'm going to go through all of these so that you guys can see what kind of things you can change, and also which ones disable achievements is also pretty major. So for if you own Reaper's Due, you can set major epidemics, which is basically bubonic plague, to be a dynamic setting. It'll happen 200 years after the game start, and might reappear 500 years after. You can put it on delayed, which means it won't happen before 1100. Or you can put it on historical and it'll appear right when it did historically. There's also this deadly setting that I've messed around with a little bit, and yeah, this setting is not recommended for a normal game. There's a reason for that. You can try it out for yourself if you want to see why. The minor epidemics, like, smallpox and everything, you can have them on default, you can have them show up more often, or you can have them show up less often. The Mongol invasion, the historical setting, the invasion will happen between 1210 and 1218. Random, we'll just start it at a random date, though it has to be at least 50 years after the game starts. Or you can set it off, which does disable achievements. If the thing turns red, that means it disables achievements, which means there will be no Mongol Horde event, but the Mongol Empire can still be formed through decision if you do it or if the AI does it. Sunset Invasion. So you can keep Sunset Invasion enabled without actually having the Sunset Invasion, which is nice because it won't bug you about buying the Sunset Invasion every time you start the game. So you can have it set to start in the 13th century at a random time, at least 50 years after the game starts, or you can turn it off. And as you can see, that does not disable achievements, so you can no longer have to worry about going through your long list of DLC and making sure that Sunset Invasion is unchecked every time. Shattered Retreat, you can leave it on, it'll work like EU4, or you can turn it off and it'll work like old school Crusader Kings. Both are achievement compatible. Defensive Pacts, you can leave it on, or you can turn it off. You'll still get threat, but defensive pacts will not form, just like pre-Conclave, and again, both of these are achievement compatible. Paradox was very wise and very gracious to note that these were controversial features in the community, and you can just turn them off, and you can still get achievements like normal, and just pretend that never happened. Personally, I actually like Shattered Retreat. I think Shattered Retreat is better for the game. That's just my opinion, but I probably am going to leave defensive pacts off from now on. I was actually using a mod to disable them, although the current version is not nearly as bad as the launch version that came with Conclave. Gender equality. Default means that the gender laws start out historical, but there's also the status of women laws you can pass to give women more privileges. Historical turns those laws off if you just want a purely historical game. And all will start with every country having the maximized status of women laws. All women inherit on the same terms of men. It's all equal. This does disable achievements for some reason. I'm not actually sure why they would single that one out necessarily. Supernatural events that can be interpreted as supernatural. So, the Hindu reincarnation events, the wolf blood events, the demon child events, you can turn those on or off if you want a less mystical sort of feel to the game. Dynamic de jure drift, you can set it to default, which is unrestricted. Restricted means that realms will only drift into your de jure realm if they border each other, or I think actually if you border by a certain number of sea tiles, that also will work. Or you can turn it off completely, and just the de jure kingdoms at the beginning of the realm stay completely static for the entire game. You can also set how long it takes for de jure assimilation. Default is 100, long it'll take 300. Very short is 10, and short is 50. Very short and short do disable achievements. Culture conversion, you can keep it on default. Restricted means it won't spread into counties which don't border the county of the same culture unless it is a port. Um, I'm getting ahead of myself. Faster melting pot means melting pot cultures will appear at an increased rate, such as the Anglo-Saxons becoming English, and Scandinavia splitting into Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian. Russian culture out in Eastern Europe. Slower conversion means that it basically works like default CK2, except that the culture conversion chance is reduced by a factor of 3, so it'll take about 3 times as long for cultures to convert. Or you can turn on a setting that enables all of the 3 previous settings. So melting pot cultures appear faster, spread is restricted, and base culture conversion chance is reduced. I have a feeling that this is something that was a debate in the design team, and they just created a setting for it instead of making it the default. Because in some ways this is more historical, in my opinion. But, your mileage may vary, you can still play with default on. Religious conversion speed, default, same as it always was. Slower means it'll take 3 times as long to convert provinces. Raiding, you can set it to historical, which is the default. Character can raid if their government, culture, and or religion allows it. Unrestricted means anyone can raid regardless, and off means no one can raid. Unrestricted and off both disable achievements, and there's also a special warning that turning it off will prevent Viking raids, which I believe is worthy of its own special warning there. Adventurers. Normal is the default, how it's always worked. Rare means they'll show up less often, and none means that they will never appear. Rare and none both disable achievements. Interfaith marriages. Restricted means you can't agree to marriage offers that are outside your religion group. Open means that rule is now gone, but it does disable achievements. Matrilineal marriages on. You can propose matrilineal marriages. Off is they're never allowed. Of course, there's a warning that if you have a female ruler, it might be very hard to avoid game over and produce an heir if you choose this setting. If you own Charlemagne, there's a couple of options for that. Custom realms can be turned on or off. That's if you want to create, like, the Kingdom of Leinster or something instead of the Kingdom of Ireland, just creating a kingdom out of your base. If you end up in a weird situation where you own like half of one kingdom and half of another, and you have enough land to be a king, but you don't actually own enough in any one de jure kingdom, you can just create a custom kingdom. You can turn those off if you want to. Story events for Charlemagne and his whole family that kind of set him up to be the Holy Roman Emperor, you can turn those on or off. Vassal republics, restricted. Same for theocracies. Restricted is how it is by default. You can only have a certain number. You could turn both of those on to unrestricted. You could have every one of your vassals be a merchant republic, but that does disable achievements. Invitation to court. You can set it to default, which is how it's always worked. Other characters will only accept invitations to work for you under very special conditions. Or you can set it to open, where the only factors determining whether they will join your court or not is whether they like you more than their current liege. That does disable achievements, and for pretty good reason. If you know the game well enough, that would be very overpowered in some circumstances. Diplomatic range, on is the default and has been since, I think, Rajas of India. Restricted cuts it in half, which is kind of interesting. You can really only deal with the people in your neighborhood of the world. And off turns it completely off, but it also disables achievements. Regencies. Underage, incapable, or otherwise unavailable characters are assigned a regent. That's how it's always worked, pretty much. You can also turn it off, so your 1-year-old can rule the country just as if he were an adult, and that obviously disables achievements. Provincial revolts. Normal is how it's always worked. Rare means that they will show up far less often, and none means that they will never happen. Obviously, both of those disable achievements. Defensive attrition. On is how it's always worked. Invaders suffer attrition in the lands of many pagan religions if their military organization tech level is too low. Tribal only restricts that only to tribal pagans, so, if the pagan king of Norway decides to start building castles, he loses his tribal attrition. That disables achievements, because I believe it makes, pagans pretty underpowered, actually, in the early game. And defensive attrition off means that there is no attrition whatsoever. Obviously, that also disables achievements. Pagan Reformation, allowed, is how it has worked since Old Gods. Pagan religions can be reformed by controlling holy sites. Disallowed, doesn't disable achievements, so if you feel like that's a little too ahistorical, you can just play with that turned off. Player only means that only a player can reform pagan religions, and that does disable achievements because it gives you sort of an unfair advantage against all the other pagans in the world. Assassination, this is a pretty big one. So plots only is how it's worked since Way of Life, I think, probably, is when they changed how assassination works. You can only assassinate people through plots, gaining support. Direct action brings back the old assassinate button. If you're a long-time Crusader Kings player, you'll remember there used to be a button where you could just pay a sum of gold and you'd have just a flat chance of assassinating the person right then and there. This disables achievements, but if you liked that option, you can turn it back on. If you own Way of Life, there are two more options. AI Seduction. AI rulers with a seduction focus will attempt to seduce other characters. You can turn that off. Doesn't disable achievements. AI Intrigue. Kidnapping and murdering with the intrigue focus. You can turn that on and off also without disabling achievements. So in order to get achievements, the new criteria is you have to be playing an Iron Man. You can't be playing with any game rules that disable achievements. No user mods that change the game's checksum. Save file must not have been changed, and Steam must be active. So that's the new game rules screen. I really like it. I think it's a really cool addition to just kind of let you tailor your experience in this kind of granular, nitty-gritty way. I think I'll be posting some profiles that I've made. Like there's like an ultra historical one, and then like there's one I call the Darkest Timeline, where like everything is just set to be horrible. Anyone can raid, and epidemics are everywhere. And I think there's going to be a lot of cool possibilities with that. So, hope you've enjoyed this rundown of the game rules screen. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out at Loresworn Order on Twitter. I am at AsaTJ, that is ASATJ. And loresworn.com is our website. We'll see you guys with more Crusader Kings very soon.